Thank you. Once again, I'm Emuso, and now definitely on standby for the rendition of the national anthem, which I am certain will be just as titillating and melodious, but also carrying the harmony of who we are in the place of expressing and transacting a very deliberate and intentional national enterprise. Good evening once again to all the very distinguished representation here in personal capacity and also as referenced excellencies here seated in this room. Tonight is a town hall meeting with His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN. And it has been on the auspice convergence of an initiative, Act Now, because now is the only time to act with regard to the very specific proposition of Nigeria's national conversation. Insights and conversations, but depending singularly on your interactive input. My name is Dayo Benjamin Zlani, and it is my privilege just to intro this event. Along with me shall be Lanre Shashere and Ikem Isiekwere, and both of them at different points in handling this program will be harnessing different aspects from the introductions to the Q&A session and the final wrap. Repeatedly we have asked, and respectfully too, that please would you have your questions written and handed over to the ushers, because the questions will be in no special priority fashion, picked out of what shall be a tombola selection. So it just depends on whose question in that role gets picked and gets an immediate reaction here in this room. For responses, along with His Excellency, we would like to welcome as well as acknowledge Honorable Minister for Power Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, SAN, the Honorable Minister Transport, the Right Honorable Rotimi Amechi, and Honorable Minister for Agriculture and Rural Development, Chief Audu Ogwe. Please let's appreciate and welcome them. Along with their teams from the different institutional references, agriculture, Power Works, Housing, and Transport. Today, the interaction and conversation shall begin. For the rest of the setting of our narrative for the evening, we're going to take a few more of the explanatory roles in video and documentary format. And even as we settle into that, I have been assured that His Excellency any moment now will be coming in to the venue, and the rest of the formalities for this engagement shall begin. So in the spirit of Act Now, national enterprise, and our 4 pillars of national discourse, unity, faith, peace, and progress, I welcome us all to an evening of insightful conversations. Oops. Thank you. Thank you.
Land, water, and pasture. These are the issues. These are the resources that are at the heart of the conflict between crop-growing farmers and cattle-tending herders. For more than a century, this dispute existed on a controllable scale, with local conflict resolution channels available to both groups, leading to mutual coexistence. But in the past 2 decades, the tension has become more ferocious and violent on an increasing scale. The fact that other sub-Saharan African countries across the Sahel, such as Mozambique, Tanzania, Ghana, Mali, and Kenya, experience similar tensions tell us that this problem isn't a recent matter, but has wider dimensions that needs comprehensive policy attention. But first understand that when the issues are colored by religious and ethnic stamps, people fail to see that there's a climate change issue of desertification and a resultant flurry to river sources. Or they fail to see that a growing population needs more food, hence more land to grow crops and more livestock to grace the tables. So while the federal government introduces policies to address the source issues of land, water and pasture, and the compound issues of security, conflict resolution, humanitarian assistance to the displaced, climate change, and food security, we must realize that this hydra-headed issue isn't a creation of today or the past couple of years. It's been brewing for decades, and understanding it for what it is and what it is not is the first step to working it out.
Oche's widowed mother celebrated when he graduated from the university 7 years ago. For 5 years after his graduation, Oche's mother became sad as he roamed the streets from city to city with a file containing his credentials and his CV, looking for work. In 2016, that changed when President Buhari's administration launched Empower, offering 500,000 engagement opportunities as volunteer teachers at state-owned public primary schools, volunteer assistants at primary healthcare centers, and volunteer extension advisors to farmers across the country. Oche applied in Makurdi, wrote a test, did not have to know anyone or lobby anyone, and was selected in the first phase as one of 200,000 young Nigerians who received digital training on a wide range of skills from classroom management to computer programming. He now earns a monthly stipend of 30,000 naira that he uses to support his mom and family while he trains for a brighter future. These young Nigerians ensure that previously unmanned classrooms are filled with dedicated hands who are prepared every day for the classes they deliver. In 2018, 300,000 young Nigerians were engaged to make up the 500,000-strong Empower Volunteers Network. For non-graduates, Empower Build has put 20,000 Nigerians into a formal and practical training and apprenticeship program across the country, where the government is also investing in the tools that will enable them start up in life. Similarly, the Empower program in the technology and creative sectors is engaging 25,000 young Nigerians to whom the federal government is investing in their training, tooling, and transition to marketplace opportunities. Just like Oche and his mom, Empower and the National Social Investment Program are touching the lives of millions of our citizens. Everyone's support is needed to transform the lives of even more of our young people. States, local governments, the private sector, and individuals must become collaborators and contribute in the effort to better our collective fortunes. Support the Empower program. Support the National Social Investment Program. Support the federal government of Nigeria. Four years ago, Emeka, Shehu, Bisi, and Ruki, all 6 years old, didn't attend school, hawked groundnuts, and were malnourished. Their parents couldn't afford to give them regular meals. All that has changed with the National Homegrown School Feeding Program. This program is the Buhari administration's policy designed to tackle child malnourishment and low pupil enrollment by giving children in public primary schools a free meal every day. Since its launch in 2016, the federal government has provided over 400 million meals to over 9.3 million children in over 49,000 schools across 26 states of the Federation. Investing in a balanced diet for children is also improving the livelihoods of about 75,000 cooks and thousands of farmers, utensil makers, and transporters along the value chain from farm to school table. Being that all food are sourced and cooked from and in the communities where the schools are, there is an evident multiplier effect in the local economies of these communities. The march to reach 24 million children continues. States are encouraged to avail themselves of this opportunity. Also, members of the private sector and all patriotic Nigerians must join hands to ensure that we banish child malnourishment and school absence to the annals of history. Investing in keeping Emeka, Shehu, Bisi, Ruki, and all our children in school today will ensure that we have a more productive workforce and safer country tomorrow. Support the Nigerian Homegrown School Feeding Program. Support the National Social Investments Program. Support the federal government of Nigeria.
4 years ago, Mama Binta could barely afford enough food for herself and her poor family. Selling firewood at the marketplace was no guarantee that her children would eat. That has changed since 2016. To address the welfare of the poorest of the poor and the most vulnerable in our country, President Buhari's administration introduced the National Social Investment Program called the National Cash Transfer. Registering millions of families onto the social register, the government has started paying 300,000 families a monthly rate of 5,000 naira to enable them meet the basic necessities of life. This livelihood support ensures that very poor households are now enabled to make basic economic decisions, as they also receive capacity enhancement that betters their fortunes, either in the form of a basic trade or other economic skill. For households with pregnant women, nursing mothers, or girl children of school age, a top-up is added to ensure that the children are provided with access to good nutrition, health, and education. Mama Binta is now among millions of other citizens who now have a sense of dignity. They say a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Everyone, states, local governments, the private sector, and citizens must play their parts in ensuring that we invest in our most vulnerable and the poorest among us. The Government Enterprise and Empowerment Program, GEEP, is a loan scheme program for our local artisans, traders, and market women. Today, there are over 1 million citizens in the local economy who have successfully registered with GEEP. GEEP has disbursed over 300,000 interest-free loans in all states and in Abuja, which have improved the trading output of the beneficiaries. There is remarkable participation by women who have recorded 56% of the disbursed loan. Through GEEP, our traders, market women, artisans, and small and medium businesses are given the necessary training, which will not only make them pay back the loan, but also equip them with the skills they need to lead and scale up their businesses.
Meet Iyajide. She sells fruits on a tabletop in the market down the road. Her entire trading stock is worth about 1,500 naira and her profit about 500 naira. Mama Silas sells rice and beans at the motor park. Her trade and profit is worth a little under 3,000 naira. Iyajide and Mama Silas still have to fend for their children from their meager profits. They wish they could stock more, sell more, and be more profitable. Like you and I, they, like millions of other petty traders, want to grow. Trader Money, an initiative of the National Social Investment Program of President Buhari's administration, is a response to this problem. It is giving petty traders loans starting from 10,000 naira and growing all the way to 100,000 naira as they grow their trade and pay back. Trader Money is reaching traders like Iyajide and Mama Silas across Nigeria and will reach 2 million petty traders by the end of 2018. This message is brought to you by the Truth Be Told initiative.
GEEP is a government enterprise empowerment program for artisans, traders. The cooperative or the association, their leaders, they will have to serve as guarantor. Now, what they do is they collect the MOU form, they fill the MOU form. The MOU form contains every details we need from the beneficiary, and it contains the legal notes to prove that this association is collecting loan from the government. They have to give us the information of the beneficiaries, their name, their BVN, their identity number, accompany their account. The beneficiaries receive the offer message. They will now accept the loan.
My name is Constance Lebechu. I'm from Imo State. I'm selling baby years. Challenges I'm facing before the Jeep loan is that I have there is so many opportunities for me to buy goods and sell, but there is not enough money for the business. But when I collected the Jeep loan, and the challenges is less, I use the money for my business and it helps me.
Emini engineer Sister Bolabi, Emini olùdarí iléeṣẹ́ Aslab Electrotech Nigeria Limited. Mo ti ṣiṣẹ́ ìbáyìí nísìn láti 1972 ni. So láti ìgbà tá a ti bẹ̀rẹ̀ iṣẹ́ yìí, àti ìríjọba kankan tó dé tí ó kó owó tiẹ̀ rẹ̀ wá lọ́wọ́. Tọ́ ó wà tíjọba Buhari dé tí wọ́n ní àwọn ràn wá lọ́wọ́, inú wa dùn púpọ̀. Adúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ ìjọba Buhari pẹ̀lú ògo Ọlọ́run àwa náà wọ́n dáwó padà dáadáa a sì tún mọ rí mi gbà.
My name is Rosemary John Ignatius. I'm from Akwa Ibom State, Ibion Ibom local government area. I'm from Ikot-Idaha here. I'm feeding children in Ikot-Idaha Ibiono government primary school.
The food is quite tasty, it's nutritious, and the children look forward to it. They enjoy the meals. Each time they come to school, they are happy.
When I come to school, I eat every day.
The food that they brought is so sweet. I like the food.
I did not eat at home because there was no food in the house. I'm taking my food so that I'll share it with my brother.
The program is very interesting. Very, very creative. In short, I don't know how to describe it. People are happy, parents are happy, teachers are also happy. Not to talk of the farmers. The farmers are happy because they now sell their goods. They go to the farm, get the farm, have the middleman that brings the items out for the caterers to buy. Buy, cook, and supply.
I thank all the federal government for what they do. I'm very happy to be a partaker of this indoor business.
The future is a creative force, one that becomes an expression in the now by one single purpose of action. Act now. Insights and conversations, His Excellency any moment coming into the room. We respectfully ask that please we be settled in our seats, and whatever other movement is required to be done with every sense of discretion. All protocols duly observed and courtesies extended once again, welcoming all of the very distinguished and venerable presence here with us this evening. more than advocacy. It's about innovating very strategic, purposeful points of view and deliberate action, strategies for action. The Honorable Minister for Trade, Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Okechukwu Enalama, also shall be coming up stage along with His Excellency. We'd like to respectfully acknowledge that in accordance with the more familiar protocols, we do respectfully welcome all of the very significant leadership that is here in this room. For the purpose, however, of tonight's business, the protocol is going to be directed singularly to the up-seated panel with His Excellency the Vice President. And so we'd like to very properly state all protocols observed. And at this point, may I respectfully ask that we all please rise to welcome His Excellency, our principal host, for this insight and conversation, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN. A round of applause. I'd like to respectfully wait for all the honorable ministers to be in position before we call for the national anthem. Thank you. National Anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. One nation, bound in freedom, peace, and unity. Thank you, Amemuso. You may be seated. Your Excellency, very distinguished guests, distinguished stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen. The first line of the second verse of the Nigerian national anthem states, "O God of creation, direct our noble course." Amen. And with that, the proceedings of the day are hereby captured within the pillar of reference by prayer and by national consensus, unity, faith, peace, and His Excellency, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, good evening, and thank you very much for calling us all conversations with you as our principal commentator and director of every interactive question, and acknowledge the Honorable Minister, Power Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, SAN. Please a round of applause for him. Honorable Minister of Transport, the Right Honorable Rotimi Amechi, another round of applause. Thank you very much. Honorable Minister for Agriculture and Rural Development, Chief Audu Ogbe. And the Honorable Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Okechukwu Enalama. Extended courtesies to all of the very distinguished representation of elder statesmen and women, representatives of the polity and political echelons of the different stratas of national political party representation here today, our chiefs of staff of the armed forces, and today the Chief of Staff of Defense Staff, General A.G. Olonishakin, is represented. We'd like once again to welcome all of the distinguished representatives of the Chiefs of Staff of the armed forces here with us. Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of development organizations here, stakeholders, partners, our Lord Spiritual and Venerable here with us, Canon Onaikon, distinguished women of Nigeria, ladies and gentlemen of the Fourth Estate, good evening and welcome. The business of the day is discourse. Act Now, an initiative that creates the future, the hope of a nation, but more importantly, amen, let it be so, for a nation's transactional elements in going forward. I'd like at this point to invite, for some other component introductions, Lanre Shashere with the Act Now initiative.
Good evening, Your Excellency, honorable ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. Thank you all very much for coming out to this evening of Insights and Conversation with His Excellency the Vice President, hosted by Act Now. Act Now is an organization that's very much committed to transparency in governance and in monitoring government performance. And we try to organize fora like this, where citizens like yourselves can engage directly with policymakers and those in government. And His Excellency very graciously agreed to be present at this forum this evening, and we're very delighted to have him. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for joining us. And welcome to you all. I hope you all find this evening as useful as we would like it to be for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, another round of applause. Let's appreciate Lanre and clearly her open appreciation both for His Excellency and all of your very excellent presence and representations here this evening. We have requested that everyone writes their question out, Your Excellency, so that the questions would come to you tombola style. Nobody getting any preferred recognition over the other in terms of the questions. And there would be a scrolling of the questions on the screen as we go along. So we'll be bringing that to you. Directing the Q&A session would be Ikem Isiekwena. Thank you. Yes. Please, let's put our hands together and welcome Ikem as he comes up.
Good evening, Your Excellency, honorable ministers. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're excited to welcome you to class. As you can see, you have your desks right in front of you, and we expect that you have collected your thoughts together to ask the questions that will be presented to His Excellency and the members of the panel. So, before we start, we'll do just a little bit of housekeeping rules. We have a massive amount of people who have come out this evening and want as much as possible to take questions, that is fairly representative of the size that we see this evening. So as such, we had earlier on requested for questions to be written down, and those questions are right now being collated. And what we're trying to do is to segment them according to the issues. But we also want this to be very organic. So we'll be taking questions. I'll be your class teacher for this evening. So I'll be calling on people row by row. So we're going to start from the first row on the right. We'll take 2 questions from there. So I hope the microphones are ready. So once the questions come through, then we will present them. Then we'll move to the next row. And that's how much we'll go. That's how we're going to proceed for the day. So, are we ready? Are we ready? Row 1, are we ready? Okay, so first person to shoot their hands up. Okay, I can see there's a hand right there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aishatu Abdullahi, and I work with the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission. Sorry, I'm just going to read out my question. Insecurity seems to be on the rise, and as a female living in Nigeria, leaving the confines of one's home to run ordinary errands or going to and from work is done with trepidation. From minors like car theft to extremes such as kidnapping, it seems the strategy that this government has adopted to combat insecurity is yet to be evident. What assurance is this government able to give its citizenry that enforcement of the law will prevail? Thank you.
So there's a gentleman behind for a second question.
Good evening, sir. We appreciate the gesture of the government in some developments such as Empower and all that, but we really want to know what measures are the government putting in place that the take home, the 30,000 naira will be well managed by these young people. Because if, for example, a young person collects 30,000 naira, he has to pay for transportation, for housing, for medical. So what other measures that the government putting in place to ensure that this money is enough for the Nigerian youth? Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to take one more question from this row.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. My question goes to my name is Ibrahim Garba Wala, or IG Wala. My question goes to the Minister of Trade and Commerce, if I'm right, or Investment. Thank you. Sir, it's about the trademark. There has been a company that has the mandate for over 10 years being the one in charge of the IT, which is the company created the trademark portal, that is the payment portal, and continues even after 7, 8, 10 years without renewal, and yet is still collecting. I knew very much well that a lot of civil society organizations have raised concern on that, but there's nothing coming out about that. A director in that ministry lost his office. He has not been allowed to have access to his office all this while. Mr. Minister, sir, your name has been mentioned as you have interest on that issue, which you refuse to resolve that. Can you speak to us about that, sir? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, row 1. We'll be moving right next to the next row. So we have some hands. The lady, she's eagerly raising her hand, so she's won the day.
Good evening, Your Excellencies and the House. My name is Barrister Nkechi Chukwueke. My question goes to women. I know what I mean by saying my question goes to women. I'm a female activist. I'm concerned about women. Now, Your Excellency, sir, I would like to know the role of women in 2019 and beyond, because so much has been said about 35, we are asking for 50. So many governors, so many states do not even have more than 2-3 women in their cabinet. And this is a big concern to us. So we would like to know what the next administration will do to make sure that at least more women are being represented in the coming 2019 and beyond. That's my question. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Your Excellency, permit me to stand on the existing protocol. I am Prebo Nimibo Hari. Your Excellency, I would like to get your, humbly, I will request your perspective on the controversial issue, statement perhaps that was made by His Excellency, Mr. President, when he shared that public interest supersedes the rule of law. We have various interpretations to that statement, and it seems controversial. So we really want to know, since you are a learned Sikh, you know more legally, and I would like to know your perspective on that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more. One more question from row 2.
Your Excellencies, permit me to stand on the existing protocol. My names are Ayon Lukman Salami. I work with KPMG. I've got 2 short questions. The first is, there has been a concern around the increasing level of foreign and local debt. Question around, is this sustainable? Can a country actually service this debt without jeopardizing funds for infrastructural development and other social amenities? So that's the first question. Is the current level of foreign and local debt sustainable? Secondly, there is, I should take it again. The first question
Please,
is,
can you repeat the question?
The first question is, there are concerns around the level of foreign and local debt in terms of servicing those debts. Is it sustainable? Can we keep servicing those debts in view of the fact that there are competing needs for those funds? Second question is around the uncertainty around the fiscal regime under which oil companies will operate. Specifically, I'm talking about the petroleum industry fiscal bill. Do we see that bill coming to law under this current regime? Thank you.
Okay, so we have our 3 questions from row 2. So I'm going to take some questions that have come in from the general questions that were submitted earlier. So our first cluster of questions will be in the area of the social investment program. I'm going to read these questions. The first one says, it goes, the SIP covers those between the ages of 18 to 35 years. What plans do you have for those in the age category of 35 to 59? That's the first question. Second one, is there any scheme for aged persons? Third one is, what can anyone do with the G 10,000 Naira loan? The fourth one is, how can the G program be sustained? The fifth, how do farmers access loans from the government? And the sixth one is the federal government considering special poverty alleviation programs beside the existing ones? And then the seventh is, what is the federal government doing to legalize the NSIP programs? So we're going to move these very quickly along. We're going to go to row 3. So 3 questions from row 3. Is there hands up in the middle? Can the microphone be taken to them, please?
Thank you, Your Excellencies, and all present here. I'm Engineer Dr. Mrs. Roslyn Chenge, Fellow Nigerian Society of Engineers. My question actually is a policy question. How comfortable is the government having a lawyer as the Minister of Works when a lawyer is the Minister of Justice and an engineer is not the Minister of Health? How professional is that? Thank you.
Okay, please. There's a hand up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to the next question, please. So if we could just settle down so that we could listen to the question of the gentleman who's already on his feet.
My name is Abdurrahman Agbola. I want to appreciate the organizers of these events, firstly. And secondly, I wish to place on record that the insights and conversations that we're having here, to a great extent, the expectations of many of us is that the organizers will look at the fact that this administration is going towards electioneering era. And when you are going towards electioneering era, one of the things you put into perspectives is the mentality of the people that are the voters. As we are here right now, most of the things that we're discussing here, as beautiful as they are, we should understand that Nigerians at the opposition level have chosen to take opposition to the gutter level, where a lot of blackmails have taken over the good deeds of this administration. When people have chosen not to appreciate a government that met a near-collapse economy, and have chosen not to respect a government that have worked more to restore sanity into the system, you begin to ask, what happens to the orientations of an average Nigerian that feels that to feed on proceeds of corruption is better than to die in discipline? Because that has been the trend that we have been hearing of recent. The question is, if Nigerians at the opposition level have chosen to resort to blackmail and nothing other than blackmail against the government, hope the pilots of this administration have realized that the 2019 election must be a win-win situation. Thank you very much.
Okay, just a few more guidelines. I think we have a large hall, and I think it's best for us to keep our questions like crisp and precisely to the point, so that we can, just go around. So I'll just implore everyone who gets the microphone to be short and crisp. So please, let's have the last person on this row.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Yetunde Deborah. What I would like to ask Mr. Vice President is what the government is doing about most of these parastatals in Abuja. For instance, I'm a business person, and the way they ask for money, for revenue for their sector is very, very crazy. They go about, okay, AMAC is a body that we're supposed to pay a fee to annually. But I discovered that they have about 16 subsections under one body. This one will come, they say they are for water. The next one will come, they say they are for waste. The next one will come, they say they are for billboards and all that. My anger is this. When they come, because I'm trained in England, and I know that when you're supposed to pay a fee to the government, they will give you your bill to pay, and you go to the bank and pay. These people come to your store with their invoice. I realized that we're supposed to pay 5,000 naira to the government. Each body comes to with a fine of 25,000 naira. I started my business in Abuja last year. I've had to pay AMAC about 6 or 7 of the AMAC subsessions. I had to pay the inland revenue. I read somewhere today that inland revenue said they eat 4.3 trillion in 10 months. Is that not too hard on businesses like my young business? Because where did they get the 4.3 trillion from what we are experiencing in Nigeria at this time? That's my question.
Okay. So before we move on to row 4, I'm going to be taking some questions from the general submissions. And right now we are going to be dealing with security, questions pertaining to security. The first question goes, what is the government doing as regards the Plateau State insecurity issues with AK-47 wielding unknown gunmen? The second one is, what is the government doing as regards security of lives and property? That's somewhat generic. Then the third one is, why isn't the government investing more in the Nigerian police rather than the military? So we'll move on to row 4. Yeah. Everyone is quick on the money. So please, I think we need to be democratic and move to the front a bit because we've been dealing with the middle section. So please, if you can bring the microphones.
Your Excellency, my question is this. I wonder if the present administration is aware of what happened in Kaduna State. The governor of the state publicly retrenched both those teachers that were due for retrenchment or retirement and those not ripe for retirement under the pretense that they were not qualified after his examination given to them. Surprisingly, he went ahead and recruited those he wanted to have. My question is this action of the governor of Kaduna State in line with the present policy of the government? Number 2, he has not paid those due for retirement. Do we then take it that the fate of civil servants, and especially those of the teachers, are now in the hands of a state, are now in the hands of governors of each state? Thank you.
Thank you. The microphone.
Good evening, Your Excellency, the Vice President of Nigeria, the Honorable Ministers. I stand on the existing protocol. My name is Yemi Osinbajo. I'm the Executive Director, African Center for Human Advancement, Social and Community Development. And my question is this. Nigeria is one of the leading countries in Africa and perhaps a major signatory to some of the protocols and treaties of African Union. My question, why is it difficult for Nigeria as a country to implement some of these decisions and domesticate them into their national plans? Thank you.
Oh, I should go ahead. So one more.
Okay.
One more question. Yeah.
Your Excellency. Who? Oh, you still have one.
Sir? You didn't get me.
What protocol?
Hello, sir?
Can you just rehash your entire question? Repeat your question.
The protocol, I'm talking about the Agenda 2063.
Yes, go ahead and ask the question again, please.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
I said, why is it difficult for Nigeria as a country to implement some of the decisions or domesticate them into their national plans? We have 7 aspirations of Agenda 2063, and at least 2 of it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Mr. Vice President. My name is Muhammad Magaji. I'd like to go first with the executive orders which have been signed by the government. Most of them very laudable, policies, but implementation has been kind of slow. We have a lot of issues coming from the airport with regards to visas on arrivals, with regards to the activities of the immigration officers and all that. That's one aspect I want to talk about. The other aspect is about our party, the APC. I am a member of the APC. Our primaries have come and gone, and there are a lot of issues that have come out from the primaries. We haven't heard so much from the government with regards to what the government is going to do to resolve most of the issues that have arisen from the primaries. So please, I would like you to address that for us. Secondly, the politicians have been aggrieved because we've been left aloof since 2015. We still have PDP appointees in the government which have not gone. So what is, it's time for elections now. We hope that they will not be in office before 2019. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we are moving to the next row. But before we go on to the next row, just please let's just keep to the order. 3 questions per row, please. Please. I'm going to be reading the questions that have been submitted prior to our start. Now we
Good
have
evening, Your Excellency, the Vice President.
Please, can you just respect
you gave me the microphone.
Order?
Can you just allow me pass my question once?
Just respect the order, please. Please. You would have an opportunity. We have to be orderly. Once we've gone through the entire rows, and if there's still time, if time permits, then we'll entertain your question. Is that okay? So I'll be taking the questions from our next cluster of questions. Deals with transportation. The first goes, what is the fate of Nigerian Airways? The second, why is it difficult? Why? It's a question. Why? I'm not making it up. I'm just reading them. Why is it difficult for the federal government to engage local professionals, engineers in brackets, to carry out major engineering projects and design rather than engage foreign professionals? If this administration comes in for a second term, what is the assurance that they will continue on the development of infrastructure? Then the last one is, what is stopping the government from decongesting Apapa and transfer some of the pressure to Calabar, for instance? So I hope you're in clapping for me. I was just reading. So we're moving to row 5. 3 questions from row 5.
Yes. My question is to the Minister of Agriculture. I come from Benue State, and it's called the food basket of the nation. I think that's not true. For the past 3 years, they don't have a single tractor. I know because I applied for it. They don't have a single tractor too. And my second question, I thought the central bank governor was going to come here, but he did not. I want to find out, what is the Nigerian bank, what sort of business do Nigerian banks do? Because other countries that I go to, our own businesses, I don't have a lot of bankers coming to ask me for opening of accounts every day in and out. So I have two bankers today who told me they were resigning, and I'm wondering why, because the pressure is too much on them. Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Okay, second.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Your Excellency, the Vice President. May I stand by the already established protocol? I am Comrade Daniel Sinolabamidele Akban, the President, National Association of Nigerian Students. Your Excellency, may I start by expressing our displeasure over what has been happening, first from this room, the leadership of the students of this country, which happens to be the largest strata of this society, is kept unrecognized. Then secondly, the leadership of the youth of this country is equally not recognized. And having said that, Your Excellency, my question is, what is this government doing about education, especially at the tertiary level? COASU have been on strike for about 2 months. Let me put it straight for record purpose. COASU is College of Education Academic Staff Union. They've been on strike for about 2 months. As the leadership of NANS, we'll be doing everything possible to discuss with them, and it's not yielding result. Secondly, just last week, as we embarked on strike, as a matter of fact, I had to decline an engagement in Liberia where we were invited by the President of Liberia, His Excellency George Weah, because of this strike, just to make sure we make a statement and get our people back to classroom. And the government has not made any statement about it. ASU is not being negotiated with, and what they are actually agitating for is what was reached as a consensus in 2014. Agreement is agreement. Wherever you sit and have agreement between two persons or between government and the governed, it has to be abided with. But on this note, ASU has taken us back to our various homes. We are not in our classrooms, and we are not comfortable. Your Excellency, we think that action needs to be taken immediately, so that we can go back to our classrooms and to save us cost. Because as we stay by on campuses or at home, the cost of accommodation is being increased, and it's not good for our parents, especially at a time when moving from 18,000 naira to 30,000 naira has been difficult for this government. Thank you.
Okay, so the last question.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Your Excellencies, all other protocols observed. Please, I'd like to know how effective the National Collateral Registry of Nigeria has been to improve access to finances, especially for SMEs. Thank you.
Okay, I will now take a few questions from the general submissions. The first one goes, so we have a bunch of questions still.
Your Excellencies, I want to ask one or two questions.
Sorry, please.
Excuse me.
We have an order, we have an established order, and you can't breach it.
No.
We will come back when there is an opportunity at the end of what we are doing. Thank you. What is the federal government doing concerning the discontinuation of the National Homegrown School Feeding Program in Ondo State? Then the ninth one is the federal government considering using the voice and testimonies of beneficiaries of the National Social Investment Programs for the world to see, to avoid being publicized negatively. Then I have a few questions here pertaining to health. What are the measures being put in place to stop the brain drain in the health sector? Second, what plans do you have for pensioners? Third, how can we sustainably fund healthcare in the country? And the fourth one is, what is the federal government doing to improve the welfare of health workers in the country? So we're going to move on to the next row, please. 3 questions, 3 hands up. Just can we pass the microphone to...
Good evening, Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President. Your Excellencies, I'm conversant with the happenings in Northeast, in particular Borno State, where I come from. My name's Tukur Digiram Shelia. The peace-building effort of the federal government have created an atmosphere of aggressive development, which the state government has also keyed into that. But also, as of recent, the level of attack that has been coming around close to the capital, Maiduguri, calls for a concern. What is the position of the federal government? We have had the same military hierarchy over the period of time, yet the security situation in the few months is a bit concerning. Secondly, Your Excellency, sir, I would like to express my appreciation to your trust, Northeast Children Trust, where in Maiduguri we have the learning center that comes with the vocational training center, housing 1,000 children from the age of 8 to 18. We are grateful. But what is the status of the Northeast Development Commission, sir? Thank you.
Sorry, could you repeat the last part of your question?
The last part of the question is that what is the status of the Northeast Development Commission? What is holding it?
So there are some hands behind.
Yes,
please.
thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. Standing on all existing protocols, my name is Comrade Safia Ibrahim Ogo. By the powers conferred on us with the entire Nigerian women seated in green there, whom our leader, the President and CEO of Nigeria Women, Dr. Ambassador Gloria Larabashoda, MNI, has directed to come for this program. Sir, the question that I wish to ask on behalf of Nigerian women, you will all agree with me that Nigerian women are the ones making governance. On every election day, Your Excellency, if you take a clip from INEC, I stand bold to let you know that every polling unit will be recording more women in numbers in every polling unit. Hence, Nigerian women are the ones making governance to work in Federal Republic of Nigeria. Nigerian women are the ones making democracy to work. Again tonight, as the first PRO of Nigerian women, as directed by our vocal national president who has cried out severally, why this marginalization of Nigerian women in governance. Sir, we see His Excellency, the Vice President, we see the Minister of Power, we see the Minister of Aviation and Transport working so hard. Your work can be made easy when you engage Nigerian women. I want to tell you that this is the first time the National Council of Women's Societies, Nigeria, the APES organization that is well recognized by CAC, by CSW in the UN, and by the International Council for Women, that we have a digital president, we now have a data bank. We have professionals, we have market women, we have artisans, we have over 500 registered athletes. We don't want when election come, you now come to us. We want to be part of the Anchor program. When you give money to Central Bank, when you give money loan to farmers, women are farming at the grassroots at NCWS level. When we are talking about at the international level, our women are in the UN making voices to count. Again, Your Excellency, we want to appeal to you. We want to bring this to the Vice President for onward discussion at the FEC. Nigerian women notice with keen interest that the Ministry of Women Affairs that was created by the National Council for Women's Society to champion the cause of women in Nigeria has not touched us so far. What we are saying, allow the Council of Women Societies in Nigeria to recognize or nominate its functional minister that will be dealing with issues affecting Nigerian women. Secondly, the other two ministerial slots, because we are the ones electing president, governors, and so on. Give us the 3 ministerial slots that you have shifted existing ministers to occupy. Nigerian women are ready to occupy before 2019. Again, the issue of rape in Nigeria, incessant rape of our children. The girl child, the boy child is a pain to the wife of Nigerian women. Our husbands, the killing, we demand and we plead that you're doing enough for security, but enough needs to be put in and to ensure.
We'll have to wrap it up. We'll have to wrap it up, ma'am.
Finally,
we'll have to wrap it
before
up.
I rest my case.
We need to move on.
I will move on now. We'll
Yes,
land.
please.
Let me land. Sir, Nigeria,
one second.
NCWS,
1 second.
Office of the Advisor to the President on Women Matter has never existed in this administration. The youth have their own. Let Nigerian women have their own and have a voice to tackle their problem. At this moment, before I rest my case, I want to appeal.
Sorry, please,
Sir,
the microphone. The
Thank
next.
you.
We are going to the next. Yes, thank you. I'm going to be reading some questions we have received from agriculture. So the questions go. Why has it been difficult for our country to produce enough food for Nigerians despite abundant land and human resources? The grass livestock requirements can be grown locally instead of being imported. Why can't we produce enough grass for our livestock to minimize conflict? The third, what is being done as regards the agricultural sector not having a research plan? And the fourth, why is the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria without an executive secretary? And the fifth one is, why is it that this administration is only focused on rice production at the expense of other agricultural commodities? Perhaps this explains why there is some hunger. Yeah. So what is government doing to address the population explosion in Nigeria? So I think we are finished from, we finished the rows down. Okay, we have the overflow to the left. So we'll take 3 questions from there very quickly, then we'll wrap this up.
Good evening, Your Excellency. I stand on the existing protocol, and my first question is, what mechanism, my name is Olatubosun Abolarinwa, I'm a security expert. What mechanism has been put in place to checkmate the administrative lapses in dealing with files and cases on administrative desks within stipulated time frame in Nigeria? And my second question is, what is the government policy or government position on the issue of flooding, which has been a repeated occurrences over the past 3 or more decades in Nigeria and is beginning to threaten our existence and food security. Thank you.
Two more.
Good. All protocols duly observed. My name is Bishop Peter Ogunmoyiwa. My question is this. I want to suggest that to address the incessant strike in our institutions, government functionaries should be stopped from sending their children abroad to school. That's number one. Number two, I also want to suggest that for us to have good roads and for government to actually supervise all the contracts on infrastructures, ministers of works and housing, ministers of transportation should be compelled to travel once in a month on road from Abuja to Lagos, from Abuja to Sokoto. By the time we have this type of policy, whereby we compel government officials to do this, they will know what the masses are suffering. Then number three, on the minimum wage, I still find it difficult on why we cannot pay 30,000 naira minimum wage when we have some retired governors collecting from their pensions and serving as ministers, and government can afford to pay these monies. Retired governors serving as senators, collecting all the allowances, and yet government can pay the allowances, and the 30,000 naira minimum wage is difficult for us to pay. I feel if government puts mechanisms to check those monies, like you come up with a policy and say, well, once you are a former governor, if you have been given any appointment now, you will take one salary and you will forfeit your pension as governor, and vice versa. I think some of these things, if you can put it into, especially as this government prides itself as government of change, these are the changes that we feel we can experience in our society, and people will say, yes, things are moving in the direction that we want it to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Ovo Tarigo.
Sorry, before you proceed, please let's stick to what we have agreed. Keep it crisp and go straight to your question. I think we know some of the context already, so it's good to just go straight to the questions.
Okay. My name is Ovo Tarigo, and I'm representing the Yali Network in this forum. In 2010, Nigeria signed the Nigerian Content Act into law, and it's supposed to encourage industrialization. However, this content is to encourage local production and local companies. Today in the oil and gas, we still have foreign companies dominating projects. Also, we do know that we have some local companies producing cars like Innocent. Why is the government not patronizing our own rather than spending money in purchasing vehicles from other countries? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for everyone who's downstairs. We are done with the questions from down. So we're going to take 3 questions from the gallery. But ahead of that, I have a few more questions to read. The questions are, first is, what are the plans for industrialization? Then, why are there no significant policies on education? What is the government's plan for IDPs? Then, as part of those who consulted for the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, there has not been any MTE report for public viewing yet. Why is this so? That's a question here. So are we ready up in the gallery?
Okay. Good evening.
Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Sorry, I ran from upstairs downstairs. I'm a little bit out of breath to get this question out. All protocol duly observed. My name is Mahogany. I'm I guess you can say a journalist, a radio presenter here in Abuja. What's up? Okay. So media is the third watchdog of the nation. We are for the people. We provide checks and balances to the government by reporting the doings of the government and by that providing transparency. Sorry, I'm out of breath. Providing transparency to the people. And this is through freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and freedom of expression. So why are we limited on the things that we can talk about and not talk about on air? Why are we limited to expressing ourselves when things don't seem to go right for the governments in power is automatically deemed hate speech? If you cripple the voice of the people, you cripple the nation. Okay? Then my second question has to do with evolution of cities and nations. Everything evolves. That's just how life is. So why has the way we rear our cattle not chosen to evolve as well? Seeing in times of this insecurity, where murder is seen as good morning. Every day there are people dying due to people losing their livestock or losing their cows. What's wrong with putting these cows in a certain area so they don't roam across the trains and get smashed or go around and eat people's yams that they've spent months trying to rear? Why do cows have more freedom of movement than the citizens in Nigeria? That's all.
Adejola Babagbemi is
Okay,
my name.
Please, before you go ahead, house rules again. Let's just go straight to the questions, please.
Okay, thank you. Adejola Babagbemi is my name. I have two questions. The first question goes to the Minister of Road. The road, Ilorin. Minister of Works, sorry. Minister of Works. Thank you. Now, the road from Ilorin Kaba Road. I understand this road on several occasions and in different administrations has been awarded, but we have not seen anything that happened there. I hail from that area of the state, and particularly the Yagba area of the state. The road is terrible. Life has been made miserable for both transporters and residents of that area. What is this administration doing concerning that very particular road? Because nothing seems to be going on. The second question, I believe His Excellency the Vice President may be interested in this question. I want to ask concerning anchor programs of CBN, particularly the agriculture anchor program. Some years back, about 2 years back, people were told they were going to be given land in Kogi State, and accounts were opened for them in Union Bank, and they got alert. But they started getting debit alert again without land, claiming those are for insecticides and all those stuff. They got heavy credit alert again this year, and they have started getting debit alert again, and nothing has been done. They cannot access this account. What exactly is the government doing to ensure that all these anchor programs are not being cornered? We are fighting corruption, and we may just be shocked that corruption is still going on in an enlarged manner. That case of Kogi State should be looked into. Thank you.
Okay, the last question.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Yusuf Abubakar Tumi. I started a brand I'm going to talk based on fact and my experience. So I started a brand 8 years ago, and then moving back, so we've manufactured about 4,000 pairs of shoes within that time. So coming back to Nigeria was more of saying, okay, you're coming back home to do something even better because you're home. We purchased a couple of machines, which is the molding machines and the shoe cobbling machines. And to be quite honest, purchasing those machines are part of my savings I'd saved back in England for at least almost 3-4 years, and then trying to ship those machines back. So we purchased the machines, I purchased the machines from China, and then the machine cost me about $32,000. Personal funds, my personal funds, not my dad or anybody. So it's quite painful for you to purchase such machines and then you have to clear a tax of almost the same amount you bought those machines for. So I lost a lot because if I produced shoes for the past, during the time frame, my brand is called Apparel Polo. So we've produced shoes for we've produced more than 4,000 pairs of shoes. Moving back to Nigeria 2 years back, I can't even produce more than 500 pairs of shoes. So I want to understand what are those, what medium is this government trying to help, because all we hear is the youth are the leader of tomorrow. So if I'm struggling to actually produce, because I'm back home, I'm sure like the ease of doing business, according to this administration, was meant to be better. But right now, it seems like it's only when you have a couple $1 million in your account, that's when the ease of doing business in Nigeria is better, compared to when you're an SME, like small scale businesses. So my point is, I've spent that money, and then I couldn't import the shoes, those machines back. Mind you, we're trying to say, grow Nigeria to make the Naira better. So how are we going to grow Nigeria to make the Naira better if there's no system that helps manufacturing or manufactured equipment to come into the country without being heavily taxed? So how can these mediums come into place? And also the Naira,
please.
Last point is the yen swap. I've not seen the effect because a lot of us still have to buy things on machineries from China, but there's not been anything effective on that. How can you help the younger generation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the questions from the floor have come to an end. I'll take a couple more questions, then we're going to be, the panel will be answering the questions. Okay, these ones are with respect to the power sector. It says, what is the federal government doing about estimated billing system? Then there's one for works. It goes, please categorically tell us Nigerians the exact status of work on the second Niger Bridge, which is the gateway to the southeast. Then there's one question about the disability bill. It says, what is the status of the passage of the disability bill? So I think, ladies and gentlemen, with that sets the tone for the answers, and then the order of answering will be that the ministers will take the answers that pertain to their respective ministries and the sectors that they oversee. Then at the end, His Excellency the Vice President will also answer the questions that pertain to the other aspects of the questions that have been identified. So I'll call upon the Minister of Works, Housing, and Power. Works, Power, and Housing in that order.
Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, my colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I think I picked a total of 6 issues relating to me. and perhaps I will try and just put them in context. Let me deal with estimated billing first. And what we have done, everybody must understand that the sector was privatized before we took office. We support the privatization, but it is not a silver bullet. There are things to be done in order to realize the promise of privatization. And the discos have the responsibility to provide meters, and they haven't quite covered the distance yet. And what we have done is to enunciate policy, one of which is the meter asset provider policy, such that we open up the market to help fund the supply of meters. As at today, 108 companies, small, medium enterprises, have applied to be meter asset providers. And we hope that as the policy takes effect and they begin to supply, the pressure and the need for estimated billing will eventually go away. I draw inspiration and belief in the capacity of this policy if we remember that initially the telcos, when they started business, used to try to sell SIM cards with telephones to us. If you remember that, those of you who bought the first Econet with body phone. But ultimately they left the business of phone supplies and faced their core business, which is bandwidth and carriage. Again, the disco's core business is not meter supply, it is energy supply, but they need the meters to measure. The second issue that concerns me is that I should be compelled to travel by road. Let me say to you that I have traveled all of the states in this country by road. I've gone on a tour. We have traveled every day for 8 a.m. over the first 9 months of my tenure as minister. And you would have seen those reports, me and my team meeting with governors or deputies where the governors are. We came by road. We traveled 12 hours every day in a coastal bus. And I still do so. The other question is the status of the second Niger Bridge. Work is going on the second Niger Bridge as we speak. We have just completed the design of the link road from Onitsha and Asaba. There was no design for those roads. They just started a bridge. That's what we met. Mr. President has approved a Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund to be funded by the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority to ensure that work does not stop on that project. The Abuja-Kano Highway, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the Mambila Road project, only on account of funding. So our contractors are on site at the second Niger Bridge, Julius Berger Nigeria PLC. They are piling as we speak. Some of the piles go as deep as 40, 50 meters into the sea bed. So 40 meters is the height of about 11 plus 12 story building to the depth. So you won't see all of that, but that's the foundation of the bridge being built. And also during the rainy season at this peak period, the water levels rise to about 35 meters high in the River Niger. That's over 11 stories also. So the need for the water levels to subside, in some cases, to continue work. The other matter, I think, is Ilorin Kaba. Yes, sir, we may not have reached you in Ilorin Kaba, but I know that first there is no state in this country today where the federal government of Nigeria is not constructing at least one road. I know that we are in Ilorin, Jeba. We have a contract for Jeba to Mokwa and to Tegina. We also have contractors around the Kishi, Kayama area, and these are all parts of Kwara State. Our resources are challenged, and therefore we can't be everywhere at the same time. But I assure you that in the fullness of time, we will get to you. Nigerian engineers and foreigners, let me again say that these are matters that we have agitated in council. Some of my colleagues have raised this issue, not the least the Honorable Minister for Trade and Investment. And I have asked also that, look, the companies that win bids are Nigerian registered companies. That is the truth. Arab Contractors is registered as a Nigerian company. Julius Berger is registered as a Nigerian company. RCC is registered as a Nigerian company. And Dantata and Sawo, and so many of them. Now, if they choose, if the Nigerians who own those companies choose to employ foreigners to their company, certainly it is not the role of government to go and choose who the shareholders choose to be MD of their company. That's not the responsibility of government to decide for a private company or a privately owned company who its employees will be. But Mr. President is concerned and has issued Executive Order 5. And the long thrust and short thrust of Executive Order 5 is that any work that Nigerians can do, we must ensure that in our own procurement control, we ensure that they get the opportunity to do so. But we must also understand the level of our technological development. There are certain things for which Nigerian companies do not have either the equipment or the demonstrable experience yet. But as we go on along this journey, we will see more inclusion. Now, let me close by saying that today we have 365 roads under construction across Nigeria as at the end of October. Out of those 365 roads, 244 started around 2001 before we came. So let us assume that it started since 1999. You do the math. But we met 244 roads awarded over a period of 16 years. But in 3 years, we have awarded 121 with less resources. So in 2015, the total distance of kilometers of road constructed for that year was 80 kilometers. In 2016, it was 277 kilometers. In 2017, it was 488 kilometers. And in 2018, it is 497 kilometers. And this excludes roads that we have resurfaced. So if you look at the growth projection in terms of increase in awarded road contracts, in terms of increase in completed road kilometers, and if you look at the energy profile of the country, where generation has increased from 4,000 to 7,000, distribution from 2,690 to 5,222, and transmission from 5,000 to 7,000, I am sure that my employers will be very comfortable with a lawyer in the Ministry of Power Works and Housing. But I will leave my employers to answer that question. But the point to make is that there are a lot of engineers in the ministry. A lot. But we met a lot of court cases which prevents engineers from executing their work. A lot of court cases. A lot of court cases. A lot of brilliant engineers. I work with them. And the results have shown that if they have the appropriate leadership, they can deliver. But engineers don't make budgets. It is administrators who do. So the budget for roads was 18 billion in 2015. Is now 390 billion in 2018. That's not an engineering problem. It's an administrative problem. In transmission, there were over 800 containers imported by Nigeria for transmission projects, and they were left at the port. That's not an engineering problem. It's administration. And the Vice President provided the leadership to ensure that we retrieve those containers. We now have 690 of them out. They are in transmission stations, and the projects are being executed. Mambila Hydro project could not take off because all the contracting parties were in court when we came. They are now out of court. We now have a contract with them. After 40 years, the first contract to construct Mambila was awarded because we have a lawyer as a vice president. And also, mind you, an army general who had a reputation for infrastructure delivery. He delivered refineries, he did PTF, so he knows what he's doing. And he is unleashing now the capacity and capability of our engineers. And I could go on, but we'll continue that conversation later. But if my employer say I should go home, I think I need the holiday now. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Now we're going to move on to the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment to address the questions pertaining to his ministry.
Thank you. So, Your Excellency, with your kind permission, I'll continue from where the Honorable Minister of Power, Works and Housing stopped. I also have about 5 or 6 questions, although they overlap. So I'll take them one after the other. The first question was on the issue of trademark and the IT services in the trademark, and that the vendor there had been in the ministry for a very long time. I think he said something like 10 years. I think just to provide context, the ministry deals with something called Commercial Law Department that deals with intellectual property. That's Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. And it deals with both trademark and patents, trademarks and patents. And under the Nigerian set of laws, we actually have 2 registries, 2 sets of laws for dealing with trademarks and for dealing with patents. One of the first things we found when we came was there was basically a lot of logjam and lack of progress in providing services to the public, because somehow these laws, which were very carefully, shall I say, crafted, had not been implemented with the spirit and the intent of the laws. With the support of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, including all the other Ease of Doing Business initiatives, we were able to get the ministry first to recognize these 2 registries with the support of the head of service, His Excellency the Vice President, and, like I said, PEBEC, which is the Ease of Doing Business initiative of this government, which I'll come back to, by the way. So one of the first things to point out is that, I think for those who use the services of the trademark registry as well as the patents, they will agree with me there's been significant progress because of these reforms that have taken place in the last couple of years. And that progress is continuing apace, even as we speak. Now, with particular reference to the technology, it is true that we met a vendor there, and the ministry has been working with the vendor first to regularize the services, because it turns out that the services were not fully regularized, but also to create an atmosphere where, like the gentleman that asked the question meant, where you can open it up, for other vendors, to provide services, in a way that is fit and proper, given that like it's a public service, and this particular vendor, like I said, what we found out was like the contract, even or the relationship had not been regularized, and that work to regularize what they're doing. By the way, they've been there for maybe 3 or 4 years, not 10. But the work to regularize what they're doing is the first challenge that we took on. And in that process, we're also hoping that it will open up the process for other people, to compete with the services of this particular vendor, but in a way that gives the vendor a fair chance, to compete with others. So I think you will find that the reforms that are going on in the trademark registry are producing very visible results. And I'll be happy. I know that all the backlog that were there since many years have been cleared, and now we are trying to make sure that there is no build-up of that backlog again. So that's the question on trademark. The second set of questions have to do with ease of doing business and executive orders to make it easier to do business in the country. Let me say again that like when this government came in, one of the priorities that the president, the vice president gave to us to focus on was the whole area of making it easier for people to do business and creating a better enabling environment. The president commissioned the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council. I know that the folders and the packets that you have tonight, there is one particular booklet that is on just the ease of doing business reforms. And I hope you will have time when you leave this auditorium to browse through or read the content, which tries to articulate and chronicle the various reforms that have gone on under the Ease of Doing Business initiative. But just to give you some highlights, basically what we've been working on are the various reforms that relate to not just small business, but even larger businesses in terms of their life cycle, from how you register a business, to how you pay your taxes, to how you obtain credit, to how you obtain construction permits. In all those areas, there have been significant movement under the 3 national action plans we have had, starting from 2016 to 2017 and now 2018. As some of you will recall, we also have made significant progress over the last couple of years in the Ease of Doing Business rankings of the World Bank. There was a question raised in particular on executive orders and why the implementation has been slow. Let me say that like both Executive Order 1 and some of the other executive orders focus particularly on trying to make it easier to do business. Things around transparency, the principle of one government, the principle of deemed approvals, which His Excellency Vice President approved as acting president. I think that was actually in 2016, or was it early 2017. But those executive orders, there have been a lot of work done with the ministries, departments, and agencies of government, with the head of service. And that work will continue. As you know, the culture of service, takes time to take root. And there is no question that we need to do a better job of that. But there is also no question that our journey has started very firmly. You will agree with me that, like, what you see now is that at least there is more, should I say, sensitivity and attention being paid to services. Things as basic as transparency, making sure that all the agencies of government have websites and that they publish how long it takes for you to get a service. We have something called pebec.report, which is supposed to give you an opportunity to register your complaints or issues in a way that the Secretariat of PEBEC, called the Enabling Business Environment Secretariat, can respond within a set time. We're also trying to work very aggressively with the various MDAs to make sure there are specific timelines for providing specific services. But let me say that this journey will continue for many years, because the truth of the matter is that it won't all be solved in a year or two. But I believe that the journey has started, and that culture of service is gradually taking root. The third question that relates to me had to do with is a question on National Collateral Registry. And just to give some actual numbers, again, maybe I should provide some context first. The collateral, the movable collateral bill that allows people to basically use their collateral for obtaining credit, which is what the question is all about. And since then, I believe that there has been increasing adoption of the National Collateral Registry with about 30,000 businesses have submitted or deposited their financial statements with assets that are valued at over 620 billion. And in turn, you also have 594 financial institutions that have registered with the registry. In other words, you have these financial institutions, mostly micro-financial institutions, that are prepared to provide credit to these businesses, based on the collateral that they have registered with National Collateral Registry. So I think there is progress, and clearly we'll see more and more credit. In fact, it might interest you to know that, when the World Bank did their rankings last year, Nigeria scored number 6 in ease of obtaining credit for small businesses, just because in terms of their rankings, yes, because this collateral registry will obviously create more opportunities for smaller businesses that may not own houses to use their whatever collateral they have to obtain credit. But I know that we're not where we need to be, but we're certainly not where we used to be. I think there may be a couple of other questions I should actually, I think those are the questions that relate to me. I'm trying to see if there's any other one that I haven't addressed.
Question on industrialization.
Okay, there was a broad question on industrialization, a very general question that asked about industrialization. I think this government has taken several initiatives in furtherance of industrialization. First, let me talk about what we met. When we came, there was already a Nigeria industrialization sort of policy, I think it was called the Nigeria Industrialization Revolution Plan, NIRP, which basically is focused on a comprehensive plan on industrialization. But that plan had not been implemented. This government has taken several steps. Economic policy of government, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. As you know, the major focus of that plan is on diversification. In addition to the objectives of the plan, like growing the economy, making the economy more competitive and investing in our people, several of the priorities from agriculture and food security to infrastructure to investing in industrialization is all about diversifying the economy. But more specifically, some of the steps we've taken include, in implementing the Nigeria Industrial Revolution Plan, we have, one, taking the specific sectors where Nigeria has a comparative advantage. Sectors like textile, cotton, textile, and garments. Sectors like tomato, sectors like cassava, sectors like oil palm. In all these sectors, we're developing specific implementation plans where we work with, players in those sectors to ensure that, we give them the advantage to produce locally. In other words, to discourage cheap imports and dumping and encourage local production. Just like was done in cement earlier and we've been doing in sugar. The other policy that we have done, or the other step we've taken, is to establish the Nigeria Industrial Policy and Competitiveness Advisory Council, which is chaired by the Vice President, which is basically a council where the industrialists meet with senior members of the government, mostly at the ministerial level, to deal with the issues that affect industrialization. And you find that the council has identified 5 areas where we are working on, and there are several interventions, over 40 interventions in those 5 areas. The 5 areas are critical infrastructure, things like, we've talked about roads and power, and also broadband for digital economy. The second area has to do with skills acquisition and vocational training. We are taking some steps in the area of sugar and some others, basically to provide basic training to those that want to go into industry. The third area has to do with financing, where we're working with the various development financial institutions like Bank of Industry, the Central Bank, and so on, to provide long-term financing and financing that is appropriately priced to industrialists. The fourth area has to do with trade and market access. And again, here is to remove the bottlenecks to trade. And then finally, we're working on policy as well. So I think the Industrial Policy Council, which means once a month, is taking several steps to address the issues that affect industrialization. The final initiative I want to talk about briefly on industrialization is what we're doing to establish industrial parks and special economic zones. The government has launched a fairly ambitious program, around trying to establish industrial parks across the 6 geopolitical zones. The whole idea is to make sure that we have centers of excellence where there is power and all the infrastructure needed for industrialization. We have one being done in Lekki in the southwest. We're trying to revamp the Calabar Industrial Park in the south-south. There's a Nyimba City in the southeast. We're trying to revamp, the one in Kanu, and so on and so forth. The whole idea is to ensure that, we have these industrial parks that are world-class, where industrialists can operate in a competitive way. I believe that as these steps begin to bear fruit, that you find that our efforts at diversification of the economy and at industrialization will also take off. But obviously, like I said earlier, these things do take some time. Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yes, I was looking for this question actually. So I was just reminded one last question. There was a gentleman that asked about shoes and who imported equipment from China and what we're doing to encourage the youth and small and medium enterprises. It's an excellent question because the general policy and the position of government, frankly, is that equipment such as the one that the gentleman described should be brought in free, because the principle is if you are bringing in equipment to manufacture locally, broadly speaking, there shouldn't be tariffs on those. However, having said that, because of the way these things are coded and the technicalities involved at the port, at times people run into problems. But I would like to encourage people like that to make us, bring such problems to us. In fact, I'd like the gentleman, to make sure that we get his details, because the truth is that that kind of equipment should come in, at zero duty, because it really fits into the industrialization plan we have. But like I said, there are still some frictions people face in doing business in Nigeria. Let me also say that in terms of encouraging the youth, we have a lot of initiatives around funding, a lot of initiatives around training and capacity building. The challenge is to make sure that we communicate these initiatives adequately and people are aware. Whether it's the kind of things that Bank of Industry is doing, the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, and the Industrial Training Fund, ITF. They all have initiatives targeting the youth and targeting SMEs. The challenge is to make sure there is matching. I'm sure some of you will know that a few years ago, one of the economists won a prize, a Nobel Prize, for what they call friction theory. And that theory basically says people are looking for employees, and employees are looking for people to work for. We have the same challenge in Nigeria. We have all these initiatives for the young, and the young are looking to how to tap into this initiative, which is why the kind of event we're having tonight is important. I think it's very important that somehow we continue to communicate what we're doing, and you are aware of it. But I will again say that please, the gentleman that raised that question should, get in touch with us, and we'll make sure that he gets a fairer treatment going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investments. So we will go to the Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development to take the questions pertaining to agriculture.
Your Excellency, the Vice President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The first question I heard was from somebody who wanted to ask how farmers can access loans. It's not been very easy for farmers to access bank loans in this country over the last many years. As a matter of fact, banks are generally allergic to agricultural lending. It's not entirely their fault. Many years ago, they gave lots of loans to farmers, and many farmers were unable to repay for a variety of reasons. First, agriculture isn't as simple as it appears to be. Most farmers had no access to good seeds. Nobody did the soil test for them. They applied the wrong fertilizers. Their yields were so low that they couldn't pay the loans back. Secondly, interest rates in Nigeria have been, on the average, at about 25 to 27% for the last 30 years. There is no way on God's green earth you can take a loan at 27%, apply it to agriculture and pay back. You cannot. not even if you are producing cocaine. And that is a fact. I am talking from experience because it is absolutely impossible to do anything productive at an interest rate of 27–30%. However, the central bank intervened by the Anchor Borrowers Program and chose certain crops. The top of the list was rice. That has led to a massive growth in the rice industry, and somebody did ask a question, why are we emphasizing rice? Because rice is probably the most consumed item in the Nigerian home today. Years ago, it was a festivity food. They cooked rice when visitors came to the house, or for Christmas, or Salah, or Easter. Today, it is consumed every day. We also found that rice was consuming more foreign exchange than any other food item we're importing, $1.6 billion per annum. An average of $5 million a day was spent importing rice. Next to that, wheat, after which, sugar, then milk. We don't produce much milk here. We have about 19.5 million cows in this country, according to ECOWAS, 10 million in Niger, and the rest of West Africa. So we have 20 million cows here, between Nigeria and Niger, 30 million, and the remaining 30 million in West Africa. Our cows have the lowest production of milk on planet Earth. And I want you to imagine the truth. The average Nigerian cow doesn't produce milk bigger than this in a day. But a cow in Uganda does between 12 and 15 liters of milk a day. A cow in South Africa does about 25 liters. A cow in Europe, 50 liters a day of milk. Why? Your breed of cattle. Number two, the way you manage your cows. Cows don't like to walk. I'm telling you this. So when we march them from Maiduguri to Lagos, we're actually tormenting them. Number two, we don't give them enough water to drink. Every cow needs a minimum of 30 liters of water per day and at least 10 kilograms of grass to eat. Your cows don't have that luxury. So the yield of beef and milk is very poor. So we spend about $1.2 billion a year importing powdered milk, which is low-quality milk. So these are the issues confronting agriculture here. The farmer plants beans, and he gets a yield of less than 1 ton per hectare. Somebody else elsewhere does 3 or 4 tons. You do rice here, we're now reaching 7 tons per hectare, thanks to some changes we've made. I was in China last week, they're doing 15 tons per hectare of rice. So these challenges face agriculture, and the questions that have been asked are many. I'll come back to them as we move on. Now, Benue State, somebody asked, why are there no tractors in Benue? Well, we do not, as a federal government, distribute tractors to states. That question is better put to the governor of the state and to the local governments in the state. But I did ask the governor once, how many tractors do we have in Benue, where I happen to come from? And he said, not one. Now, there are 36 governments in Nigeria plus FCT. And FCT is bigger than many countries. FCT is 15 times the size of Singapore. FCT, 8,500 square kilometers. Singapore is 650 square kilometers. And it has a population of nearly 4.5 million, so it's as big as a country. If the states and the local governments don't do what they should do, I'm appealing to all of you not to keep heaping the blame on the federal government alone. We do not dictate to them. We do not dictate to state governments because this is not a military regime. President Buhari did not appoint the state governors. He did not appoint the local government chairman. It's a democracy. He can't dictate to them. So sometimes you must learn to ask your states and your local governments what they are doing or not doing. We can only do so much. If all of us put hands on deck, some of the problems we have wouldn't happen. Why has it been so difficult for Nigeria to be self-sufficient in food? Simple. For a long time, we forgot that growing food was a priority. We depended on imports: rice, sugar, milk, tomato paste, honey. We were spending $400 million on tomato paste and $18 million on toothpicks. Toothpicks. So a country that believed because there was oil revenue that it didn't have to do anything but import was bound to get into trouble the way we nearly did. Now, we want to return to agriculture. It is not cheap. You have to engage in research. We have 17 research institutes, but sometimes funding has been scanty. Sometimes when the budget is not passed in good time by the assembly, because agriculture here is seasonal and rain-fed, we lose a whole year. Like this year, our budget came out in July. By the time funding got to us in September, we had lost one season. So this year's performance report, in fact, this quarter, by the Bureau of Statistics, is going to be very poor because we lost a year. We don't do much irrigation here yet because irrigation is not cheap. We're working on it. That explains why sometimes there's a shortage and sometimes there's a surplus. But we are not we are not lacking for food. Prices may be a bit high. Nobody will tell me that he went to the market and couldn't find yams. We have them. The prices are a bit high because transporters, bad roads, and other facilities, especially in the rural areas, they account for the problems that farmers encounter in bringing their food from the farms to the market. Those are realities here. Flooding. Oh, sorry, somebody asked, why do we import grass? We do not import grass, we import grass seeds to plant here. Now, you don't have every kind of grass you need. If you're keeping dairy cows, you need bracharia, especially, or alfalfa grass. And you don't have them here. We've just brought samples of alfalfa from Nevada and domesticated them here, and now we're multiplying. There are other grasses that are good for cattle and milk, even for your health and mine. There are some grasses that cows will not touch. They don't like the smell, and the edges of the leaves are too sharp and cut their tongues. I keep some cows, by the way, so I know how they behave. So we're not importing grass. We're importing grass seeds and multiplying here. And every country has imported either seeds or grass. Saudi Arabia has the largest single dairy farm in the world, the Almeida farm. 130,000 cows producing milk. They are the happiest cows in the world. They live in air-conditioned tents. And they don't go anywhere. But because Saudi Arabia wants to produce milk and be self-sufficient, they are prepared to go to any length to import the cows and feed them and produce their own milk. And they import grass, because you can't grow grass in Saudi Arabia. It's desert. So there are reasons why we do certain things. It's not that we love importation as a hobby. Flooding. What do we do about flooding? We can probably dredge the major rivers and dredge them a bit more, so the volume of water they can hold will improve. But flooding is a natural phenomenon. You cannot stop it entirely. It has happened in the US, UK, Spain, Japan, the Southeast Asian countries of Malaysia. It happens from time to time. Italy, even Italy had a big flood recently, and Spain. So floods will happen. How to minimize the effect is what we should think about. And we are now thinking of large numbers of earth dams and lakes to stop some of the water so we can also keep the cattle around these lakes and prevent them roaming around. Why are cattle given greater freedom of movement than human beings? That's not very true. The cows wander in the bush, sometimes by the roadside. If you want to wander in the bush, you're free to do so. But the truth is that it's because we have not reorganized our cattle breeding system that the cows continue to walk. There are people who tell you that is the way of life of the herdsmen. They can be improved upon, and we are doing everything we can to do that. Kogi Anchor Borrowers Program, I'll be surprised that they are billing somebody whom they have not given a loan. If you know any farmer who is experiencing that, please let me know in a letter, and I'll find out what is going on. Finally, why is it that the administration is only focusing on what is government doing to address the population explosion in Nigeria? Now that we produce more children in a day here than in the entire European Union, according to the statistics. And we're about 200 million. They are 500 million. Who is going to issue the decree to stop people producing children? I think it's about all of us recognizing that it is not cheap to bring up a child and slowly moderating reproductive activities. You cannot. That's the truth. Yeah, can you imagine the government of Nigeria saying, like they did in China, you can only have 2 children? Which government dares say that in Africa? So we can advise, and we believe that people will recognize the trouble of bringing up a child and the cost. And we hope that with more education and exposure, that this will come about on its own. Otherwise, government can only carefully talk about this subject, because we shall come against severe criticism from religious bodies, from other bodies, and individuals who say, it's my freedom, God gave it to me. Thank you very much indeed.
Your Excellency the Vice President, my colleagues, distinguished and gentlemen, let me start by telling you what the Minister for Agriculture wanted to tell you. I didn't tell you all in full. He just was advising the young men that you can fire without killing. That's the way to reduce the population. No government can stop you from firing, but you just don't have to. If we all produce from firing, we will not live in this country. The land is still the same land our parents met. It's not expanding. What is expanding is the population. Let me start by the question that will make you laugh. Whoever asked that question that Minister for Works and I should go by road is being unfair to me. Insist that the Minister for Works should not fly my plane. Anytime he is going to Lagos, he must go by road. As Minister for Transport, I must fly by air. I have no business with roads. At all. If I'm going to Kaduna, I must go by train. Is it not? Very soon, we will finish Lagos to Ibadan. If I'm going to go to Ibadan, I must also go by air to Lagos and then go by train to Ibadan. That's the way to do it. Don't force me to his business. So that man was not being fair to me. Now, to reassure the man, I come from the part of Nigeria they call South-South, right? There was a train service that the federal government started building or constructing for 34 years. 34. It's called Itabe to Warri, right? Right? It took just a memo to the president, no loan. That project, there was no loan, to approve and ask us to complete that project at $120 million. We have finished the track. We have tested it. You saw me. I took it from Itabe to Warri. I got to Warri 8 p.m. Not because it's slow. No, It does 150 kilometers per hour. But what happened, I stopped literally at every village on that road, on that track. I stopped to see for myself what was going on. It is not rocket science. It is just commitment and leaving public money for public purposes. You know, there's one crazy theory I did one day, and I said to my friends that one way to stop corruption in Nigeria is to allow everybody have access to the till. If all of us go to that till and steal that money, there'll be no money again to feed. Inflation will be too much, the country will explode. Then we will decide whether we want to be a country or not. If that happens, then we will leave public money for public purposes. Because you know one thing about you Nigerians, you don't ask the question, you're asking him about roads. Before we came, the roads were very good there. Then we went there, as the Minister for Works, he started digging the roads, bad men. And he dug, as I listened to the vice presidential candidate, I'm going to appear and Arise on Thursday, because I want to respond to him. I listened to him say, road to Aba to Umahia. I was governor of Rivers State. I awarded the contract to the boundary between Rivers and Abia. Tell him which one did he award. No, I will ask him that question. You know, when people, and it's you Nigerians, when people say, oh, he saved money, the reason why you're a governor is to use your public money to construct roads, to provide services, to provide water. So, as governor of Rivers State, if I took all the money they gave me and I kept it for 8 years, you'll be clapping for me, eh? No, ask me now, answer me. So if I kept all that money for 8 years, I didn't give water, I didn't build schools, I didn't pay school fees, I didn't deal with health, you'll be clapping for me, I'm a good governor, right? No money should be left in public accounts if there are projects to be done, apart from money you are saving for rainy days. So how do you save money when the road to Oka, my wife is from Oka, Enugu, I mean, and the capital of Anambra is where? 5 minutes drive from Enugu. The road was not good. I did not wait for the federal government to do the road from Port Harcourt to Owerri. How many of you here applied that road? You saw the one from Rivers State, right? Up till now, I've not asked federal government to, okay, well, there's one man there, the governor of Rivers State, my governor. Maybe he has not asked for the refund. But I did not wait for the federal government. Because of what? Those who use that road are from where? Rivers State. And business in the first place will pass through there. Once you pass our boundary between Rivers and Imo, you start crying. True or false? Practical. I engaged on the road from Port Harcourt to Aba. True or false? There was no flyover. There was no flyover at Rumokrosi Junction. I had to do an interchange. So tell the governor, the vice presidential aspirant, we have spent 4 years. PDP has spent 16 years. Let's deal with issues. One good thing for all of you Nigerians today is there is no opposition party. You agree? You agree that there is no opposition party? There is no opposition party. PDP was in government for 16 years. We are in government for... So you compare. There's no opposition party. All of us were in government. The comparison will be... we got money, $1.6 billion, and we are doing Lagos to Ibadan. PDP got $2 billion from Central Bank, and it went to private pockets. That's why I said there will be comparison between us and them. They are not opposition party. Exactly. That must say 8 years. 8 years for us, right? Very good. Very good. Now, so if you move on from there, we have awarded the following contracts on rail. We've awarded the contract from Lagos to Ibadan. We are trying everything possible to complete it in the next 3 to 4 months. And that contract is $1.6 billion. For the man who wants me to go by road, that's why I'm responding to him. We've awarded the contract from Ibadan to Kano. We've awarded the contract from Port Harcourt. No, we're about to award the contract from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, which was I used it as a child to go to Ngwayeke. Ngwayeke is where? It's in Aba. But I think within Abia and Imo State. But I had to go through Ngwayeke to Oberiomuma in River State. But federal government has awarded that contract. At the same time, you will agree, and we're not denying it. PDP will tell you that they started Abuja, Kaduna, right? We have never denied it. The day we were commissioned that project, the speech of the president and my speech contained that fact. But what we did not tell you in public was that they stopped in a Catholic premises. That's where they stopped. They couldn't move forward. And I came and I met the sisters. Sister, why are people giving us problem? They said, PDP people don't want to pay us for our land before they demolish. I said, just payment? He said, yes. And then that they should relocate them. I went to FCT minister. A week after, they gave us land for them. We fenced the land, then we paid compensation, and we bought through that land and completed the rail. At the same time, we put 4 locomotives and 14 coaches. Now everybody is calling me on the phone. There's air conditioner. It's very good. And you keep to time. It's like overseas. I'm very proud when you call me like that and say, oh, I just came out of your this and it's beautiful. So I thank you for that. That response to the man who said that myself and the Minister for Works should go by road, let him continue to, he's doing a wonderful job, including River State. He's doing the Bodoboni Road, which was abandoned by everybody. He's doing that. And don't forget that road was awarded at 49 billion. Now it's 120 billion for leaving it. And he's doing it, and I hope they will complete it very soon. And I thank you for that. The next question I thought you would respond to, we are not collecting double salary. I don't know about National Assembly. I'm not a member of the National Assembly. I only earn the salary as Minister for Transportation. I have never collected anything from the River State government. But let's assume that I wanted to collect. The man there won't give me now. Again, the next question is Nigerian Airways. Nigerian Airways is dead and buried. Can you listen? What you have is air, and government is in the process of establishing for so many reasons. The reason of identity, reason of, is it ego or pride? Reason of the fact that we need to move you around, business, we need to move business and human beings around. Why should you fly British Airways to Britain if you can fly Air Nigeria to Britain? So what we are doing is put the method in place that will not make it go the way Nigerian Airways went. You get that? And the cabinet will finally take a decision on that, and it will be communicated accordingly. However, the pensioners and retirees of Nigerian Airways that have not been paid since they left Nigerian Airways, I hope you know we are paying them. That's why I say that you will compare apple with apple. This time, no opposition party. Opposition party most times are people that have not been in government. This time, PDP has been in government. We are also in government. You compare how much they got and how much we got, and who spent or applied his own funds properly for the benefit of Nigerians. Now, you talked about engineering localization. My colleague, the Minister for Works, did respond to you. In our own ministry, what have we done? What we've done in our ministry is that those technical aspects that require expertise outside Nigeria, we'll allow them to do that. However, we are localizing those expertise by insisting that they must transfer technology. One of the ways that they want to transfer technology is to build universities. That's why we got the Chinese company with their own money to build a university of transportation in Katsina State. They are building one. The South Africans that are coming will build one in Ubima. You know where Ubima is? Where? My village. Let me tell you what I underwent when I was taking that decision. I said, no, people will say it's my village. And then I asked myself, is my village not part of Nigeria? Exactly. So I made sure that the second transportation university that will be paid for from the narrow gauge will be in my village. I didn't say River State, in my village. Then, finally, and again, we are insisting to CCCC that they will produce locomotives and coaches here in Nigeria. We are looking between Zaria and Ajokuta. They have chosen Papalanto. They are insisting on Papalanto, but we are insisting on either Zaria or Ajokuta. But whichever place, it doesn't really matter. Anywhere they choose is Nigeria. What's important is their money, and they're going to establish the factory here in Nigeria, train Nigerians, and produce those locomotives and coaches in Nigeria here. That's what we're doing in terms of localization. Finally, you asked the question of the congestion at Apapa Port to Calabar. First is that we don't decide, the government will not decide for an importer where he wants to import from. That's the first thing. Most of them want to import through Lagos because of insecurity in the South-South. What are we doing to address that? The federal government has approved a contract of $195 million. We're in the process. They are training security men to take over the water from Calabar to Lagos so that our water can be free, but manned by the Nigerian security personnel, the Army, the police, the Air Force, and the Navy. There'll be 2 helicopters, 2 fixed-wing planes. There'll be warship too. There'll be 20 vessels that will chase any criminal. Just give us time. But at the same time, we must also ask ourselves, those of us from the South-South, who are these criminals that are going to the water? They are from Togo? Eh? And most of you don't know the implication. The implication is that we are now being charged war insurance rate. So importers don't want to use that, the seaports, because they don't want to pay war insurance rate. If they pay it, then you also pay for it. So the only place that we're not paying it for now is Lagos. And you see, Lagos State government say, please, can people move to other place? Move to Calabar, move to Port Harcourt, move to Warri. But nobody's moving because of insecurity. Are we addressing it? The answer is yes. So that's what we're doing first. The second thing we're doing is, I thought the Minister for Works would have addressed it too. The roads are being fixed. But like you know, between Port Harcourt and Lagos, you don't have up to 6 months of dry weather. I was governor of River State. That's why what usually happens when I was governor is around January, I borrow money. So I can work till May and stop. Then from June, I begin to pay the loan I have borrowed from the money I will get from June to December. So that's the problem we have at Apapa Port. We are gradually working hard to ensure that the roads are completed. But beyond that is that we are going to rehabilitate the narrow gauge. The narrow gauge is going to come on stream, and then we can decongest by ensuring that the goods are taking hinterland via railway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of Transportation. Now, we will call upon His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, GCON.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please sit. I should have brought more ministers with me so that I'll have less work to do today. I think that most of the questions have been answered, so I'll just take the very few that are left. Let me start with, Honorable Ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry that I breached the protocols, and also to thank very much a lot of our very senior leaders who are here, our leaders. I see especially our religious leaders who are here. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming. Very quickly, I will take some of the questions. ₦30,000 naira. I believe that's the N-Power 30,000 naira, and whether it is enough or is not enough. First, the idea of N-Power, which is the program for employing, direct employment of young persons who are out of work, graduates, in some cases non-graduates, for the N-Tech, N-Build, and all of that, was supposed to be government's own direct intervention in job creation and training while the job is on, while you are still being paid. It's not meant to be a permanent employment. That is why when you're engaged as an N-Power person, you are given a tablet like this. In that tablet, there's a lot of training material, a wide range of training material. We expect that any N-Power graduate or N-Power beneficiary will also develop themselves using that material. We also have an open portal which has a lot of material which N-Power beneficiaries use. Now, that is just one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, of course, is that you are paid. You are teaching or in public health or extension work as an extension worker in the farms and all of that. So there's also some experience being gained. Many of them are trained extension workers now. Many are trained in public health. Many are being used for enumeration, for doing surveys and all of that, a lot of international agencies, etc. It's not meant to be permanent, but while you're at it, for at least a 2-year period, we've extended beyond 2 years now, and we've taken on 500,000. And in the next phase, we are looking at taking on yet another 200,000 and another 300,000. In all, we'll be employing up to 1 million. That is the largest tertiary, largest post-tertiary jobs program in the entire Africa. And the reason why we've done so is because of the employment needs, the employment problems that we have. We may not be able to employ everyone, but we must provide, at least government must do some direct provision of jobs. That's why we have provided so far about 500 jobs. 30,000 naira will not ever be enough for all of the needs of any individual. But you must, but the whole point of it is that it is meant to at least sustain a person while they are learning and while they are also developing opportunities for themselves. And if we pay less than that, obviously that would even be would be worse. But if you were to pay more, already 70% of recurrent expenditure, that is all of the revenues of the country, 70% of it is already, 70% of all of our expenses is on recurrent. A large portion of that is salaries. For the first time in the history of this country, we are investing 30% in capital. Before now, they were investing 11%, 12% in capital. Now we're investing 30%. So even when you talk of 30% for N-Power, 30% minimum wage, we're increasing recurrent. In other words, government is spending more just on paying salaries. So we've got to also look at all the other ways. Infrastructure is important. We're investing far more in infrastructure, as I've said. But it's infrastructure that will provide us the opportunities to create even more jobs, especially jobs through manufacturing and industry. So as we're building rails, as we're doing power, the transmission projects and all of that, that is the way by which you can develop industry. We're energizing our markets at the moment, putting solar power in the markets across the country. We have a designated 300 markets. We've done Ariaria, we're doing Sabongari, we've done Sura in Lagos, Isiko in Ondo, Bagi in Oyo, and we're expanding that, providing power, providing infrastructure so that more people can work. So it will never be enough for any one person, especially direct government jobs. You'll never have enough for any one person, but it is meant to tide people over a period while they are learning, while they are being trained, and while they are being given other opportunities. I think it was Mrs. Okechukwu who talked about the role of women and wanted to see more. I'm told, Mrs. Okechukwu, that you were in Lagos State, you served in Lagos State as a very senior government official, so at least you managed to get a very good position in Lagos. But I think it's true that there is we can do far more with engaging women. Of course, we can do far more. And one of the ways by which we've tried to do that is in ensuring that our loans, for example, the loans that we've given, for example, the Jeep loans, that's the largest loan scheme that we're doing. 56% of those loans go to women. The CCT loans we're doing also, over 60% of those loans go specifically to women. So there is a lot of preferential, preferential advantage that we try and push in the way of women, for the simple reason that we know that they are more effective managers, even of resources, and they pay back. They pay back all of those loans, they pay back all of those facilities. For ministerial appointments, I think there was a mention that we should have an advisor on women affairs. I don't see why not, but we already have a women's affairs ministry, and if we want to have a women's advisor on women affairs, I don't really see why not. But I think the most important thing is to create more opportunities for women, more education for women. One of the problems with population, those who have studied population, excessive population growth, some of what we're experiencing, a lot is tied to the fact that women are not educated. A large number of women in our society are not educated. With education, women have fewer children. If you look at the survey shows that an educated woman would have between 2 and 3 children. Uneducated women have up to 5 and beyond. So education has a way of even controlling the number of children that are born. So we can actually control population by educating children, women more, so that women are not just seen as childbearing, as just some instruments for childbearing, and that they have a real role to play in society. So I agree entirely that we should do far more for women, and I believe that when we see some of what will emerge, as I'm sure in the next couple of weeks, a clearer policy on the 35%, clearer policy on the 30% that we've been talking about for so long, and I'm sure we'll get that very, very soon. Somebody asked a question on why, I think he said the statement about public interest superseding the rule of law, security superseding the rule of law. And I want to say, I'm not so sure whether the gentleman is a lawyer, but if you are, there's a case called Dokubo and the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It was in that case that the Supreme Court said, and I'll just quote it because I have it here with me. Where national security is threatened, human rights or individual rights of those responsible take second place. That's what the Supreme Court said. Now, the question is, in my view, I'm a constitutional lawyer, and I don't necessarily agree that security should trump human rights or the rule of law. But that's the position the Supreme Court has taken. The only question we should then ask is who determines where security should trump the rule of law? Who should determine that? That's the question. The principle which the Supreme Court has stated, repeated by the President, the only question we should ask is who should determine whether security in any given situation is more important than individual rights? Who should determine? My respectful view is that it is the courts that should determine that. It's the courts that should determine that, not the executive, certainly not us. We shouldn't determine that. But as far as the principle is concerned, it is a principle contained in a Supreme Court case. So it really begs the question whether I repeat it or you repeat it or the President repeats it. The only question we should ask ourselves is who then determines whether security, in any given case, whether security is more important than human rights, and it should be the courts. So that should always be a matter determined by our courts. Somebody asked a question about sustainability of debts and whether or not we can sustain our debts at the current levels. Let me say again that very frequently you find people who are, creating fear around debts and giving the impression that this particular government has borrowed more than previous governments. And I want us to just always try and check the facts, just so we understand what the facts are, clearly what the facts are. I want to give you very quickly, I have all the facts here. I'll give you the dollar-denominated debt of Nigeria. Now, I'm denominating in dollars myself. That is the total debt of the federal government, the state governments, and local governments. I'll give you the figures just so that you understand what exactly has happened over the years and whether it is true that this government has borrowed more than any other government, as the opposition like to say, and as some people who may not be as well informed like to say. In 2010, our debt in 2010 was 35 billion. I'm cutting out the fractions. 2010 was 35 billion. 2011 was 41 billion. I'm talking dollars now. $35 billion in 2010. In 2011, it was $41 billion. In 2012, it was $48 billion. This is unpaid debt we're talking of as it goes on. In 2013, it became $64 billion. It moved from 2012, $48 billion, 2013, $64 billion. That's almost double. 2014, it became $67 billion. 2015, it fell to $63 billion. 2016, 57 billion. 2017, 70 billion. 2018, 73 billion. So between 2015, when we assumed office, it was 63 billion. Today, it is 73 billion US dollars. The difference between 2015 and now is 10 billion US dollars. That's the difference between 2015 and now. Now, we're talking of the aggregates, we're not saying, so we inherited $63 billion in debt. Today, it is $73 billion. Now, what do these figures show? One of the things that I want us to always bear in mind is that when oil prices were at their highest, oil prices were their highest between 2010 and 2014, the highest ever in the history of this country, $100 to $114 a barrel of oil. That was when we had the sharpest rise in debt. There was more borrowing when oil was at its highest than ever before. There was more borrowing. So between 2010 and 2014, we borrowed heavily. Our debts moved between 2010 and 2014 from 35 billion to 63 billion, while we were earning the highest amount. And all of these figures, you can cross-check them easily. There's DMO. DMO has a website. It's open access. All the information is openly available for everybody to see. People who talk about, who talk about these things, like to, and I've given the absolute numbers. These are the absolute numbers of federal government, state government, and local government altogether. So when they say that our debt position, they are borrowing, it's not true. What is true is that when we were earning the highest from oil was when we borrowed the most. And you cannot explain that. It's completely inexplicable. You cannot have all that money and yet be borrowing in large number. But we know the explanation. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there this evening. But the other thing I want us to bear in mind is what is called the debt to GDP, our debt to the size of our economy. Our debt to GDP is one of the lowest in the countries that we compare ourselves to, or that are frequently compared to us. Our debt to GDP today is 20%. That's our debt to GDP. When you compare our debt to GDP to, say, Ghana, Ghana debt to GDP is about 68%, whereas Ethiopia's debt to GDP is about 48%, almost double ours. So in terms of the size of our economy and our debt, we're doing okay. Where we may have an issue is debt to revenue. In other words, are we making enough? Are we collecting enough taxes? Are we making enough revenue compared to the size of our budget and what we want to spend? There's a lot more to be done. That's where we're talking of taxes. We're saying that more people must pay taxes. We're saying that we must pay more VAT. We must collect more VAT. We must earn more. because that is really where our problem is. It's in more revenues. It's in earning more revenues. If you look at the FIRS figures show us today that 914 Nigerians pay self-assessed tax of more than 10 million naira. 914. Not 1,000. Under 1,000 Nigerians pay self-assessed tax of up to 10 million naira. Only 914. Of that 914, 912 of them live in Lagos. The other 2 live in Ogun State. No other Nigerian outside of Lagos and Ogun State pays self-assessed tax of more than 10 million naira. There are those who are seated in this room who should be paying more than 10 million naira in self-assessed tax. But that's the kind of situation that we have. So we're simply not collecting enough revenue. And it's because so many people are under the radar, so many people are not paying taxes. But as far as our debt, our debt profile is concerned, we are not in any discomfort. In any event, most of the debt that we're even talking about is actually local debt. Most of our debt is local debt. The largest portion of our debt is local. It's Naira-denominated debt. It's Naira debt and not foreign debt. So we're not in a terribly uncomfortable position at all. I think there was a question asked about AMAC and multiple taxes, too many taxes for small business, and I agree entirely with that. This is a problem that we're dealing with all across Nigeria. And it's one of the problems that we're dealing with under the ease of doing business. We are now addressing subnationals, including the Federal Capital Territory, how we can harmonize taxes, how we can ensure that small businesses don't have to pay all the multiple taxes that they are talking about. And the second phase of our ease of doing business is focused exactly on that. That's the primary issue. One of the primary issues, beg your pardon, is the question of multiple taxes. And there's no reason at all why we should have this, this large slew of taxes. And I agree with you entirely, and we're definitely working on that. The questions have been asked around security in Plateau State, security in Maiduguri, recent security threats in Maiduguri, and all of that. First, let me say that generally, the questions of security, especially as related to herdsmen and farmer clashes, are issues that we have been dealing with, as you know, over the past 2.5 years or so. But again, these are issues that the country has been dealing with for well over, I think perhaps well over 15 years. And a lot of these problems have continued to recur. Why are these problems recurring? The major issue is the struggle over pasture and water. The struggle over pasture and water, the struggle over land. Now, people might ethnicize it. People might make it a religious matter and all of that. But all of us know that fundamentally, the question is one over pasture and land. There are those who have asked the question, why, I think there was a young lady who asked the question whether, why cattle should not, why we shouldn't change our cattle rearing habits, why cattle should still be moving around and all of that. Fair enough, and I think it's a good question. But everywhere in the world where we've had similar problems, including the US, the so-called cowboys in the US were actually herdsmen, right? Wandering all over the place with their cows until it made sense that ranching should be done as opposed to cows wandering all over the place. We've heard the Minister of Agri talk about the fact that cows themselves do not even want to wander around the whole place, that they are better off where they are sedentary, where they are stationary in one particular place, and where they can be milked. One of the problems that we've seen with even our production of milk is that our cattle do not get enough water, do not get enough rest to be able to produce the milk that they ought to produce. So there is every reason why we should promote ranching. And one of the issues that we've worked on over the past few months in particular, especially with the Governors Forum, is that of creating earth dams, creating opportunities for ranching, and trying to see that we do not have a recurrence of these problems. If you notice, for those who study these trends, usually in the wet season, you don't have as many clashes or as many problems over the farmer-herdsman clashes. You don't have as many. As the dry season approaches, the areas, December, January, and all of that, is when you have these clashes, because it is at those periods that the cows are moving from the north, from the northernmost parts of the country, especially to the Benue River areas and all of the shores, the riverine areas in the northern part of the country. That is what really creates the clashes. But if we're able to create the earth dams, we're able to create ranching opportunities, and these ranching opportunities, of course, are business opportunities. Those who create ranches are paid for they are paid for their services, and I think that we can control a lot of the security issues by just creating more opportunities for cows to be able to settle and be ranched, and also at the same time ensuring that we have earth dams even when they are moving all over the place, and where they are able to get pasture and water without the kinds of difficulty we have. Now, a lot of problems around cattle rearing have to be resolved at the state level. The federal government does not own much land anywhere. A state government decides what to do with its own land. So if a state government decides that it's going to create ranches or create opportunities for ranches, great. But it's the state government that must determine that, because states control their own land. All land is essentially within the control of state governments. So the federal government cannot by itself say we are going to go and create a ranch in Jos or create a ranch in Plateau State. We cannot, because the federal government simply doesn't have the land. And you cannot use land in any state without the consent of the governor. So that's how it works. So sometimes people say, oh, why is the federal government talking about creating ranches? We can only work with the state government, only willing state governments. If a state government is willing to create ranches, it sells the land to those who want to create the ranches. In some cases, we are prepared, there are facilities that we may use, for example, where we are creating earth dams and all of that, where we have put some money aside for rehabilitation of places that have been destroyed by some of these clashes. We can assist, but the state governments have the absolute discretion over whether or not they will support ranching or support any other kind of facilities for cattle. The questions around the security of Maiduguri and some of the recent clashes, of course, we're looking very closely at that. I know that there have been several recent clashes, but what we are going to see, is these kinds of opportunistic attacks. But I want to say that we're a long way from when over 17 local governments in that state were in the northeast, were under the rulership of Boko Haram. We're a long way from there. We do not have territory that has been captured and retained anymore by Boko Haram. We still have these opportunistic attacks. And that's the nature of what we're getting. In fact, we are seeing that ISIS West Africa is also trying to get into some of the terrorist activities that we're seeing, especially in the northeast. But these are the challenges that we have to face as a nation. They are the challenges being faced across all of the northern borders of our country today. A lot of our neighbors are experiencing exactly the same problems. Niger, Cameroon, all of our neighbors. These are the challenges we have to face today. And I believe that the government of today is well able to deal with those challenges, and we're dealing with those challenges. But there are immense challenges, and we have to keep adapting. We have to keep seeing to it that we're ahead of some of what is going on, across the nations of the world, especially even now in most of northern Africa, with Libya being a passageway for some of the stuff that we're seeing here and there. So someone asked the question of what has happened to the Northeast Development Commission. That was signed into law in October 2017. We believe that it should be constituted but as quickly as possible. But one of the reasons why there's a transition going on now is that the Presidential Committee on Northeast Initiatives had a 3-year mandate. That mandate ends this year, 2018. And at the end of its 3-year mandate, we expect that it will morph into what is called the Northeast Development Commission. That, as I said, has already been signed into law, so it's existing law in the country today in Nigeria, and there's a transition going on. There was a question asked about why is it difficult to domesticate Agenda 2063 and the various aspects of Agenda 2063. I think that most of Agenda 2063 has been domesticated. Most of it has been domesticated. The question is enforcement. If you look at the 7 different items, inclusive growth, sustainable development, and all of that, an integrated continent, if you look at inclusive growth as an example, every one of the policies that we're trying to implement are policies around inclusive growth. Every one of them, whether you are talking of education or our own social investment policies, for example, which is the largest social investment policy that we've ever created in this country, a 500 billion social investment policy. So we're looking at issues around around healthcare. We're looking at issues around education. We're looking at issues around poverty, ensuring that we're able to limit poverty. The reason why we're giving what is called market money and trader money is to ensure that there is inclusive growth and financial inclusion. We're opening bank accounts, so far 349,000 as part of our social investment policy. Another one of the Agenda 2063 outcomes is an integrated Africa. So we have the AFCTA, the Continental Free Trade Area, which is an important issue in that integration. We're not going to become one country called Africa, but we are going to integrate along business lines, around economic lines and all that. The AFCTA is one of the important ways by which that can be done, right? And we've looked at other ways. All of the other regional agreements, are ways by which it can be done. There's an outcome about Africa, about good governance and human rights. Of course, all of the human is because we realize that in the entertainment industry and in technology, where you have a large number of young people doing incredible things in entrepreneurship, they are not involved in policy formulation. So the president constituted that committee, and I have the privilege of chairing that committee. We brought in young people in technology, young people in entertainment and creativity, and they're involved in policy formulation. We sit with the honorable ministers who are responsible, CBN and all of that. All of us sit in the same room, working out policies on technology and creativity. Same thing with the Society of Nigerian Arts and all that. I think that the issue really is that we must recognize that leadership is diffused. Leadership is not in one place. And wherever that leadership is, whether it is in business, whether it's in sports, whether it's in entertainment, creativity, whatever, it is our duty to work with that leadership to ensure that the leadership and all of those that they represent come into our own space, so that we can work together and do good for young people all across the country. The ASU strike, it's not true that there's no engagement going on. As a matter of fact, the next meeting between the government delegates and the ASU is on Thursday. That's the day after tomorrow. So there is engagement going on, and I think that we should be able to resolve these issues. But we must also bear in mind that everybody is talking about more money, which is, fair enough. Everybody should want more money. But the resources are definitely limited. Government simply cannot provide all of the resources that will satisfy everybody's desire. That is why it's important, and these are the appeals that we make very frequently to trade unions, that it's important that we bear in mind that we're dealing with a population of 200 million. We have a budget of 8.6 trillion. Of that 8.6 trillion, 70% of it goes already in salaries and overheads. 70%. And the 70% goes to less than 2 million people. And we have a 200 million population. So we've got to just look at how it is that we cannot, it's impossible to answer to all of the monetary needs of people by the size of the federal budget. So we have to keep, this must be an ongoing conversation. We can't say, oh, the only thing to do is just resolve it, just find a way of paying them and pay these other ones too. If you do that, there will not be enough resources to do the very important things that we need to do for the rest of the 190-something million Nigerians. Somebody talked about discontinuation of the homegrown school feeding in Ondo State. That is true, it was discontinued. There were some infractions that were found, but it was resumed in July. That homegrown school feeding has continued since July. It stopped due to many infractions over BVN. Some of those, the cooks who are being paid, they found that there were many who were using fake identities and all of that. And that had to be resolved. But that has been dealt with since July. There's a question around sustaining healthcare financing. And I think that one of the most important things to first bear in mind is that healthcare financing has suffered over the years. It's suffered very, very seriously over the years. Even when we were earning the most money, we were underfunding healthcare with the large amounts of money that we had. In 2015, the budget, the healthcare financing budget was 22.7 billion naira in 2015 when we came into office. And as of today, issues. And education, same thing, was 23 billion in 2015. Now it is 102 billion. In the same, and we're talking about barely 3 years, earning 60% less. So the issue really is that it's one of commitment, of government's commitment. I think that we are committed to healthcare financing. For the first time in the 2018 budget, we are putting aside, according to the law, to the Health Act, we are putting aside 1% of consolidated revenue of our consolidated revenue fund for health alone. 1% of the CRF goes to health, and that's the first time that is happening. So I think the question has already been answered about whether governors who are serving in government should forfeit their pensions or should not forfeit their pensions. These gentlemen who are here, the two of them behind me, I don't see them spending their pensions very much, but I think that so far I've noticed that they spend less money than they used to spend when they were governors. I don't think they're as happy as when they were governors. So that's between Governor Fashola and Governor Amici. The last question, I think, was on free speech. Somebody asked a question, I think it was the lady upstairs who asked a question about free speech, whether we should not allow free speech and all of that. And I have no problems with that. I think that there is a great amount of free speech going on in the country. I think that people say what they like, and if you don't like what they're saying, people say it on social media. So there's a lot of free speech, in my own opinion. As a matter of fact, what we should worry about are the consequences of some of the excessive freedoms that we have. So there's a lot of fake news. There's a lot of news that can create confusion in the country. There's a lot of news, and these days, anything is out there in the media. Anything, just about anything. People say in fact, there's nothing I haven't heard. The last time, a few days ago, my wife woke me up and showed me a post which said, Osinbajo found with strippers. So she said, what were you doing with strippers? I said, frankly, I can't remember, you know. The truth, but I mean, this is the sort of thing you find, you know, all over the place. So I was at an engagement with entertainers. I took a photograph with two nice-looking, pretty ladies. It turns out that in their daytime job is actually stripping, but I had no way of knowing that, you know. But I think there's a lot of free speech. I think that people say a lot, but we really need to be careful, because some of what is going on, especially using media to promote hate, using media to promote division, the consequences can be very grave indeed. If you remember Rwanda, it was radio that caused a lot of the crisis, the genocide in Rwanda. And even the ICC, the International Criminal Court, had to sanction media organizations and owners of some media organizations because they propagated the hate speech that led to the killing of over 800,000 people in Rwanda. So we need to be careful about that. Nobody knows the answer yet to how to deal with social media, but I think that's an important point, you know, that we should bear in mind. But my respectful view is that we're doing very well with free speech in the country. Those are the major questions that have been asked. I think there's a question, there was a question around a scheme for elderly persons and all that. And I believe that we will address this scheme for elderly persons. I'm sure that you've seen quite a few of the discussions that are going on at the moment about the vulnerable and elderly persons and how they can be incorporated in the social investment program. And I think that there's a very good chance of that happening. There's a lot of discussion going on that. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you have enjoyed this evening as we have. We also trust that you are by now more knowledgeable about the government's programs and, you know, what essentially is a scorecard. There's an absolutely hilarious Photoshop picture that I've just seen, and it depicts hate speech in, you know, ramifications, Photoshop, and all other, you know, tools that they use to put these things together. So, but we have come to an end, and if the photograph will pop up, I'm sure you would see it. But while that is going on, I think one of what we've learned here is that laying the foundation for, you know, stable and a prosperous nation, you know, might not be glamorous, and it's often invisible. But, you know, what we have seen is a conscience-driven, resolute commitment to just keep building, you know, despite the challenges and all that we have seen recounted. But there's an absolute commitment to investing in people and investing in projects that matter to people. Now, for those whose questions may not have been answered, those questions will be answered. They will be referred to the relevant departments, agencies, you know, or ministries, as the case may be. And then we're also going to provide an email. Is on the screen, actnownigeria@gmail.com. If you send those questions across to this email, we'll refer those questions to the relevant authorities, and we'll provide you with answers. So thank you, Your Excellency, once more for honoring our invitation. Thank you, honorable ministers. Thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. You've been a wonderful audience so far. I would like to say thank you for your time here. We hope there will be an opportunity for us to engage further. And I think at the request of the Minister of Agriculture, is requesting your presence at a similar town hall event where you can take detailed questions regarding the agricultural sector. So please be his guest. So thank you so much. It will be announced, the time will be announced, but it's going to be any time from next week to December, the first week of December. So let's watch out, and I'm sure you would find any relevant information on the Act Now social media platforms. So that's it, folks. God bless you. You've been wonderful. We'll take the national anthem, and we'll end the evening. Good evening. God bless you, and good night.